Book Review Part 2, Negotiation Mythbusters, Rethinking Everything You Know About Building Strong Agreements, a conversation with mediator Sylvia Mayer. That is our topic for today, part of the series, Mediation Book Reviews. Welcome to the Lawyers and Mediators International Show and Podcast by InstantMediations.com, where we discuss law and conflict resolution topics to educate both professionals and everyday people. Catch regular episodes on YouTube, the Instant Mediations app, and anywhere you get your podcasts. Just remember, nothing in these episodes constitutes legal advice, so be sure to talk to a lawyer, as cases are fact-dependent. Hey everyone, this is Mac Pierre-Louis, attorney, mediator, and arbitrator, working throughout Florida and Texas.
And Natalia Ołowska-Czajka, advocate, mediator, and arbitrator from Warsaw, Poland.
Hi, everybody. My name's Sylvia Mayer. I'm an arbitrator, mediator, and attorney located in Houston, Texas. Thanks for having me.
Yes, great to have you again, Sylvia. So we are moving on to part 2 of this book, Negotiation Mythbusters, that you had introduced last week. And we had been spending some time discussing some common myths that exist in the world of negotiation and conflict resolution and mediation. And so last week we talked about how trust is necessary and negotiation is win-win, are common myths that we need to reanalyze and rethink about. This week, we're going to be going to a few more different myths. And so, Sylvia, first, let me share my screen before you proceed and show folks who might be watching, or if you're listening, head over to the channel. You can check it out. This is the book, Negotiation Mythbusters, Rethinking Everything You Know About Building Strong Agreements by Dan Oblinger and Allan Tsang. And so you can pick it up, but it made a big impact on our colleague Sylvia, which is why she comes and writes articles on these topics, actually. One of which was published recently on her website, smayerlaw.com, where titled Mediator Insights Bursting Bubbles by Challenging Mediation Truisms, Part 2. And in this article, she talks about knowledge is power and always be empathic. These two myths that she wanted to investigate and explain why the authors had their positions. And she goes into it a little bit from her own experience as well. So, Sylvia, take it away. Why is knowledge is power a myth for negotiations? I thought that was a good thing.
Well, thanks for that introduction. And let me say I'm cheating a little bit, and I'm combining 3 of the myths that the authors challenge in this discussion. So they raised 30 myths that they challenge in their book, and knowledge is power is the 3rd myth that they go into. But there's 2 interrelated myths that they also challenge. One is whoever knows the most about the other side wins. And the other is just ask all the right questions. And both of those tie back to the question of knowledge. And so I sort of wrapped them together in a package. And here's the point that they make. You have to think about why you want knowledge. So if you are seeking knowledge for power, then you are seeking knowledge for dominance or control. And dominance and control are not healthy ingredients to any negotiation or mediation. If you're seeking knowledge to help you gain insights and information to bring about clarity, open up opportunities, enable you to see new avenues, those are productive uses of acquiring knowledge. So you shouldn't be thinking about, I need to ask all the questions. I need to get all the information. I need to ask the right questions. There's no one, first of all, there is no all the information. There is no right questions, because really what you should be seeking is information that allows you to build connection, find opportunity, explore different pathways to get you to a deal or an agreement or compromise or a settlement. And so underlying the challenge to this myth, I think, and this is me extrapolating from what they wrote, is that intentions matter. If you are interrogating somebody, if you're asking questions because you're trying to dominate them, that's not conducive to a settlement. That's not conducive to an agreement or a resolution. If you are posing questions that are designed to be probing, to challenge what they're thinking in a way to manipulate their views on the situation, that's also not conducive to a negotiation or a mediated outcome. Instead, what you should be seeking is information to help you with clarity, to help you with understanding, to help you with connection. One of the examples they give is one of the authors is a former FBI hostage negotiator. And they share that when the FBI is teaching hostage negotiators about gathering information, only one of the components of that effort is asking questions. The rest of what they focus on is listening, observation, exploration. And I think that's something that is critically important for us as mediators. I find probably the most important thing that I do in a mediation is to listen and to observe. And I do that. I listen and I observe, not just to take in substantive information, but also to support with somebody, to connect with somebody, but to find when the right moment is to maybe shift a direction, change focus. When are they becoming receptive? So it's really a way to look differently at knowledge rather than saying knowledge is unimportant. That's not their message. They're saying, look at knowledge differently. Think of knowledge as a bridge or a tool that helps you achieve what you're looking for versus knowledge is control. Knowledge is power.
Yeah, I can relate to that very much. I understand, for example, that when you're thinking about knowledge, if you know too much, like, for example, oh, you are suggesting this solution in mediation. Oh, it didn't work for my neighbor, so it's not going to work for me. It's like forgetting that some other people might have bad experiences with certain solutions. It doesn't mean that it's a wrong solution. Maybe they did something wrong. And therefore, just again, that's another focusing, right? Of course, when negotiating custody, you can consider some sort of historical events, but they do not have anything to do with what we are doing in mediation. So really focusing, gathering, but this is also the mediator's role. You can bring people's attention to something more specific, more adequate to what we are discussing in mediation, rather than them allowing them to just expand on some sort of hypothetical situations or fears, and which then can change their attitude and moods in mediation and actually make the agreement impossible to be reached because of thinking too much.
Absolutely. You touched on something in there that I think is really important in this discussion, which is reframing. And that's something that we as mediators do, is that we receive information, and sometimes what we do is reframe that information to help parties see it in a different light. And that's a totally different way to use knowledge, right? That's not using knowledge as power. That's using knowledge as a way to help open someone's mind. To see things in different ways, to maybe be open to a new possibility.
So we should use knowledge. We should help our parties use knowledge as a tool to facilitate negotiation and conflict resolution. We should not be uh, letting our parties use their search and quest for knowledge in order to intimidate, dominate, control, and seek more power. My takeaway from this is connects a little bit back to Robert Cialdini's book, persuasion when we talked about the issue of reciprocity. I think the search by one party to obtain knowledge for the sake of power is naturally going to be met by the opposing side wanting to do the same thing. And I'll give you an example. Let's say I'm doing mediation and I have a party, the parties did discovery, they've exchanged information. Let's say we're doing a divorce settlement agreement, we're attempting to. And one side opened up their bank accounts because they were asked to by the other party. Okay. And the other party demanded it to the point where the side who opens up the bank account feels like they're burying their private and personal spending habits. They might, their initial reaction would have been, it's none of your business, okay, what I'm spending my money on. But the other side demanded it. And so the quote unquote victim, the one who opens up, maybe out of like, fine, let's just get this over with, or maybe because they feel intimidated, that person is going to, and I've heard this many times, is going to have a natural reaction to fight back and say, well, to make it fair, I want you to open up yours as well. Because the thing about power is whenever you are attacked, you want to defend yourself. And if the attack came in the form of trying to get you to divulge information, you're going to want to do the same thing. I've just seen that too often. Had a mediation once where the mother was insistent about the father providing certain income sources, okay, for setting child support. Well, of course, you guessed it, what the father then responded by saying, well, I gave my information, she needs to as well. And so they're starting to use the quest for knowledge as a sword. Now, he should have, because he has to pay child support. But the point is, he still felt attacked as if he's giving all of this from his part, but it's not being met reciprocally. And that's where this feeling of injustice comes in. So it's very important then when we talk about using your search for knowledge smartly, not using it to attack, to belittle, to prove a point, to harass. It doesn't lead anywhere. All it's going to be is counterproductive because you're going to be met with the same kind of resistance, and it may break down negotiations. It may break down discussions. So the better way is to use knowledge as a vehicle to try to get information. So one last point, aside from reframing, I'm always talking about rationale. So when you're the mediator, you're doing caucus style mediations, you go to the other side, you got to give them a rationale as to why person X, the other party, wants certain things. If you give a rationale, and then you can not manipulate, but you can smartly and adaptly use uh, use your words to convey the reason, the rationale, good reasons why this information should be turned over, then I think you're going to be more successful because once a party understands, oh, that's what he needs it for, sure, okay, let me turn it over. It's not because they're feeling attacked, but they're turning it over because they feel that, okay, this is going to make the process work and move it further. Anyway, just some thoughts. Wanted to get your thoughts on that.
And I think that at this stage, we should move to the second myth we are going to be fighting today, which is you need to be empathetic the entire time. Is it really true for mediation? Is it really true for negotiations, as the books say?
That's exactly right. Sorry, I'm looking at the book. Myth number 4 that they want to bust is always be empathic. And this one really struck me because in so much of my mediator training, I have always heard one of the number one skills a mediator needs is to be empathic. And it just so happens I am naturally empathic. So that always came easy to me. I was like, great, this is really good. I can do the thing they want. And then I read this book and it said, myth, always be empathic. And it made me really stop to think. And here's their point. Sometimes empathy is what's needed. Sometimes the situation requires empathy, but it doesn't always. So first of all, there are situations where empathy just isn't needed. It could be a pure dollars and cents situation, and there really are no emotional things. There's no emotional baggage around it. It's just figuring out a number. Another situation might be a person who is not really tapped into their own emotions. And when you try to connect with them empathically, you have now scared them off. They run because they don't want that kind of empathic connection. But then they go on one step further and they talk about you have to look at the intentions of the person who is seeking to be empathic. If the empathy is coming from a perspective of wanting to connect, to find opportunities for resolution or negotiation, to find a solution to a problem, that's one thing. If the perspective of the person seeking to be empathic is to use empathy as a way to manipulate or control or dominate, that's another thing. And it is not conducive to a durable outcome in a negotiation or a mediation. And it really made me stop to think, you know, I had never thought before about, yes, I'm naturally empathic, but am I always empathic in my mediations? No, of course I'm not. Because I might get in a room with a party and realize this is not about emotions for them. This is an intellectual exercise for them. So me being emotional and touchy-feely is going to get us nowhere. Instead, I become somebody who wants to talk intellectually. I want to probe about the case law. I want to understand the numbers. I want to understand the calculation. Or there may be a situation where I realize that somebody is trying to use emotions to manipulate the outcome. And then I need to start helping to put guardrails around that and help make sure that while empathy is good, manipulation is not. And we need to find the path between the two to get us to resolution.
Yeah, Natalia, your thoughts?
Yeah, empathy has always been so important for me too. And then hearing that sometimes you need to forget about it is at first rather shocking. But then you realize that really there are people who don't need empathy. There are people who are empathic themselves. But I also believe that empathy is something that needs to come naturally. That is that's first, but also is a tool that has to be wisely used. If you have it in your toolkit, be aware it's a tool and not a requirement 100% of times.
Absolutely. And I think the theme that runs through both of the topics we discussed today, both of the myths, is that intentions matter. And so the way I look at it is these two myths, knowledge and is power and always be empathic, are really two sides of a coin. On one side of the coin, you're using knowledge or empathy as a way to connect, to find safety, to explore options, to share, to, to open up avenues for resolution. On the other side of the coin, you're using knowledge as empathy as a tool to manipulate or control or dominate. And if you're using them in those ways, whatever the outcome may be is not going to be durable. Because when someone walks out of an agreement, whether it's a mediated settlement or a negotiated agreement, and the reason they got to that end result was manipulation, dominance, and control, they are far less likely to live with that agreement and far more likely to seek to have it set aside or challenge it or simply breach it going forward. And so part of what we need to do as mediators is make sure that we're helping the parties come up with an agreement that's durable, that will actually be able to continue on once they've agreed to it. And so it requires integrity on our parts as mediators in supporting parties finding a path to resolution.
Yes, and this reminds me a little bit about the last talk about trust being necessary, right? That you know we can, just for the sake of the negotiation agreement, get parties to work together in a way that can resolve their conflict, but not necessarily help forever transform their lives to become trusting parties completely. much similar to empathy. We can, if it's a numbers game and the issue on the table is to debate valuations, we can get to the point. We don't have to basically get feelings involved. If it will help the parties do a successful negotiation that resolves the dispute. I mean, it seems like a rough way to live in a way, but I think this is just being brutally honest, right? And we have to know when there's a time to value knowledge for knowledge's sake and empathy for empathy's sake, and when there's a time to use knowledge and empathy appropriately in order to get something accomplished. So, with that, Sylvia, did you have any final closing words before we wrap up?
No, I really appreciate y'all for letting me come share. I love to read. I love to talk about what I read. And so thank you for the opportunity to do that.
No,
Thank
absolutely.
you.
And thank you for the opportunity to share with us this knowledge and the rest of the world. Okay, guys, with that, we're signing off and looking forward to Sylvia's next topic, whether it's a book review or on episode on bankruptcy mediations, which she's a pro at. So make sure you check it out on the YouTube channel. All right, guys, this is Mac Pierlui signing off.